Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Hello.
Hi, welcome to Modern Medieval, the podcast. I'm Elo.
And I'm Meaghan,
Uh,
back from the dead of COVID.
yeah, poor Megan had COVID last week, and if you listen to that episode, you can definitely feel the difference between this week and last week.
Yeah, definitely much more like energetic
Yeah,
and
she's a
not as
true trooper,
raspy.
incredible trooper to record being sick. Takes true dedication.
Well, thank you. And we have some really exciting things in the works at the moment. We don't want
Yeah,
to spoil too much, but we're going to get some music for like transitions and intro outros due to one of my new PhD pals.
thank you.
Yeah, we will have him on, I believe, in the next week or two, but we might be sampling some music here or there of his to, gotta
Spice
support one
things up.
another. And the music he does is like super epic, like movie soundtrack sounding a la Lord of the Rings and like Hans Zimmer and stuff.
Your
So,
audience, I will be listening to it for the first time too, so you'll get my undivided, honest opinion.
but I guess I'm just saying that it's not like, oh, I'm going to support my friend who does like hip hop rap that
Oh
is
God, that would be
not
so
related.
funny.
I would have unabashedly done it anyways, but no, this is like very in our vibe, in our theme. And then we also got a surprise email this past Friday of
Something
a
really cool.
really cool opportunity that we will give more
Please,
information about, yeah, as time progresses. But
we
that
want to
should
keep
be,
you wanting some more.
yeah, but I guess needless to say that big time academia is going to enter into this
Oh
wee little
God,
podcast.
I feel a little bit. I feel like I've been processing through that throughout the weekend, and I was just been like, can't believe it, can't believe it, can't believe it, can't believe it, and it still just hasn't gotten real.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, when I read that email in the morning on Friday, because I checked all my
Yeah,
emails and everything, because I just don't like the red dot notifications.
that's fair.
And it took me a tick to kind of click, and I was like, is this?
Real.
Yeah. And I was like double checking that it wasn't from some sort of, kind of those generic aggregates that you get where they're like, we noticed your podcast, but
Yeah,
it's some really random, obscure thing. Like, no, this is like directly from a university
it's insane.
printing press and not just some random one in the middle of Kentucky or like Wyoming. It's,
Yeah, we'll reveal more later,
yes.
because otherwise we'll definitely give out more information than we want to.
But for this week, we wanted to just kind of keep it simple yet again,
Pop
uh,
culture.
pop culture and just kind of pop culture interacting with the medievals. So we're at different stages, but have both started the Netflix series Disenchantment, that, is the animated series by Matt Groening. So the same person of like The Simpsons and Futurama, because it just is
It's
like
deep.
literally
Yeah,
in the field that we talk about.
yeah,
So Ella's only like a few episodes in because
yeah.
I started it, and I'm halfway through season 2, and I know that season 3 just dropped like this week or
Oh,
the week
right, makes
before.
sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's also kind of its time. But even just looking at images of the show, even if
For
you haven't
sure.
watched it, or if you watch just the trailer, you get,
The medieval vibe for sure. Like it
yeah,
really is everything you've ever watched in films of like medieval knights and um medieval films put into animation.
yeah, and it really kind of asks the question of like the different scales of medievalism
Yeah.
and the way that we think of and look at the medieval. And it's also just like unique because this is, it's rooted in the medieval times. So it's not something like The Night Before Christmas that you
Yeah, exactly. It's very
watched,
different.
Elo,
Yeah.
where it takes something from the medieval, puts it in the modern time. It's like this is going back to the medieval and then bringing modern
Yeah.
stuff to it.
It's also quite interesting because like in that like with that show you kind of have the thing of like, am I laughing at the medieval, with the medieval? So kind of going back to the first few episodes, if you've listened to it,
Yeah.
where like that kind of question becomes apparent because obviously it's quite funny. um but like you there's a bit of that, like, what am I laughing at exactly?
Yeah, like laughing at or laughing with the Middle Ages. And I definitely think it's about a lot more of the laughing at, but
Yeah,
there are the few that you laugh
with. Yeah.
So I guess the best way for us to kind of, get into some of the themes and everything is to talk about impressions.
Yeah.
Why don't you go first, Elo, since you're the much more
Fresh.
raw, fresh person with this?
Well, so I thought, so the thing I thought was that obviously the first episodes of any show kind of set the tone and are trying to introduce the themes and kind of get you hooked, right? And so the first episodes, right? I'm not going to spoil anything because if I spoil, I don't know. Should I spoil?
But spoilers are fine.
Okay, spoil. Sorry, we're spoiling. So in the first episode, like you've got like a princess who's getting married, but it's an arranged marriage so that two kingdoms, can reunite forces and all that. And like she's really your anti-hero, and she's really like very modern woman, like 21st century, with like things like wanting to go out and drink and have fun, and she doesn't want to be married because she doesn't really see the point. And so like quite a lot of very modern themes. And then she is forced to marry this prince who she doesn't like, and then obviously that doesn't happen. And so this whole story is very like kind of contrived in a way, because it's not like a linear story, but within that you have like funny moments, and then they introduce a couple of other characters. And what I would say is that like it's funny, but it's also kind of hard to get into. But the animation is amazing. And I think obviously it's one of those things where like once the more you get into it, the better it is. But like I watched 2 episodes, and between the 2 episodes I took like a 2-hour break because I was like, I'm quite a binge watcher, so like usually if I like something I just continue on, but for some reason with this it felt like a bit long.
Hard. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I go along with a lot of what Elo just said, and so Princess Tiabini is, our princess, also known as Bean, and the creators they view her as this like quote unquote feminist take, which
I kind of see it.
There is that, but also a lot of the writing staff still not like a 50-50 male-female split. It's still very male dominated. Yeah. So there are moments where I think that you describing her as an anti-hero is very apt, because she does make like lots of mistakes.
Yeah, she does.
Is not always the most likable character.
No, she's a bit whiny, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, having watched all the first season, it starts off super rough, and it's not just us looking at like critics' reviews and things. It's the same, and then it kind of gets more mixed, where people are like, then it gets amazing, and other people are like, it grows and develops. I'm in that much more kind of
critical
I'm
mindset.
still not 100% sold, but I'm like, oh, this does get better, it does develop, it just it takes a lot to get through.
Yeah.
And I find that part of that is like with the humor, that it feels like it's trying too hard and it falls flat.
I also think it's one of those things where like the writing, like very critical, but I don't think the writing is that, like the animation side is beautiful. I would say that the writing isn't that good at the
writing
moment.
Does get better as well, and that is another thing. The animation across the board, people have been like, it's animated beautifully.
Yeah.
In regards to like the storyline that you were mentioning, Elo, and everything, I mean, it's a very, in the beginning, generic medieval
tale,
like romance tale storyline for the most part, of princess, arranged marriage, and then the quote unquote feminist twist of her not wanting to, for very valid, like, this is just for politics. I always thought I'd get married for love kind of thing. And I mean, it is also like a generic medieval kingdom. It's called Dreamland.
Yeah.
So very kind of like, it's not quite as funny as something like in Shrek, like Far, Far Away or something, but it has that kind of
vibe. Yeah. For
every medieval story vibe.
Yeah. I think the issue I had with like the first episodes, I thought was very slow. It's a very slow burner, but like the hype doesn't quite live up. I don't know if that makes any sense.
What hype are you
like? So for example, they set out the story, And I thought that by the end of the episode, like it would actually be really funny.
Mm-hmm.
But actually in the end it kind of falls a tiny bit flat.
Yeah.
And I think also every time they make a joke, whether sexual or like a stupid joke or, you know, that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
it takes too long to get there. And so then it kind of gets a bit anticlimactic.
Okay. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And yeah, I mean, I do agree. Um, it just the introduction of the characters, like our three quote unquote like main characters. I guess that's not true. There are like a lot of like actually equal main characters, but we have Princess Tiabini, so Bean, and then we have her elf companion Elfo, who
Yeah.
comes from Elfland, but he's like the cynical one, and he's not like happy, tra la la, so he leaves. And then we have Lucy, who is Bean's like quote unquote personal demon, and you know Lucy's like a plan like Lucifer demon
Yeah.
thing. And then we have T-Beanie's dad, King Zog, who I find to be like the least funny. I feel like he's
Yeah,
just annoying for me
I
more than
agree.
anything, but he's like the patriarchal king father that isn't very smart, but just like loves being king and blah, blah, blah. And then some more minor characters are around that. And I don't know if you ever watched Game of Thrones at all, Elo, but this is
No,
meant to be like The Simpsons, again, created by the same creators. The Simpsons meets Game of Thrones. And there are definite overlaps of that in the first season, especially with, I mean, there's like literally a throne of swords in it's either the first or the second episode that, or maybe it's later. I've like lost track of what happens when that impales one of the princes. Did you get there,
yeah,
Ella?
that's the first episode.
That's the first episode. Okay,
And then they find another prince for her to marry.
his brother. Yeah.
But it was interesting because also they had the what's it called from the Greek tale, when they go to the siren and Ulysses, when he goes and travels, so she tries to get rid of her like fiance, and they go into the sea and they go past like the sirens.
Yeah. I
So it
mean,
was actually interesting. That was interesting because it was kind of anachronistic, but
yeah,
cool.
no, I mean, there are a lot of really great, like, little quips like that that show up and, like, pop culture references in the background and everything. We also get, like, a Selkie in season 2, which is, like, a Northern Scottish tradition, as well as, like, parts of, I believe, the, like, Norwegian and Scandinavian countries. And so, you know, like there are bits of that that I do appreciate that are funny, but like the overall dialogue and everything, not so much. And it's just, yeah, I find it,
It's a good attempt.
yeah. And like I said, it does get better, but it's just a really like thinking of it, just the idea of this being a show and the pitch and everything I find interesting because, you know, you had The Simpsons, so like the everyday family in generic Springfield, America, you know, and that becomes a joke of, well, there are 11 Springfields in America. And so it's always playing on like which one it is because they're all across the country. You have Futurama, which is the future show.
Mm-hmm. And this
Uh,
is the past show.
yeah, and then this is the one that's in the past. I haven't gotten to season 3 yet, but apparently they bring in some like modernity, like steampunkness. So I'm actually quite interested in how that all works out because then that's like a clash of the medieval and the quote unquote modern.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the idea, just I don't know, like the title Disenchantment is so generic, but again, it's like a playment on Enchanted, the movie, which is like fairy tale and the sorcery. I mean, there's literally a sorcerer called Sorcerio
Yeah.
series, which I find quite funny. But I guess it's just the idea of something that is so generically medieval being created, and then it's also done via animation. I don't know if you
Yeah.
have like thoughts on that, Elo, but it's.
I mean, I feel like in a way, a lot of the medieval content that I was introduced to when I was little,
Mhm.
was through books, right? And you'd always have like drawings or illustrations, of the scenes and stuff. So to me, that kind of brings more like something relatable to your or my past or to my childhood. So I thought it was quite cool, and it kind of could go with like the idea of manuscripts and that kind of relationship to the text and to the story. That's maybe been my thinking. You might think about it differently.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have like concrete thoughts about it because I kind of fluctuate, and I get what you're saying. And of course, there's also the like, this is satirizing just by it being animated of like Disney and Pixar and all of that. I guess it's also just when has been. I guess Vikings is a show that's currently live action that is set in a medieval past, but there aren't other shows that really come to mind that are set like that. I mean, I could be missing some.
I can't really remember them really. But I do think, like, for example, like there's quite a lot of comic strips. When I had a brief period in time when I like looked at comic strips and stuff, and that tended to be a thing. Like there would be quite a lot of plays on King Arthurian scenes and stuff like that. So
yeah, I guess I'm just thinking more about like, I guess we're in a period of time where the medieval isn't made into live action series. I mean, we had Game of Thrones, of course, and I wonder if that just so saturated or was like such a cultural phenomenon that it kind of.
How do you feel about Game of Thrones? I haven't.
That's for a different time. I have many feelings and thoughts, especially about the final season and the way that it ends.
Oh, okay. I haven't started it. I kind of got like, there was a lot of nudity, and I was like, it's not for now. In the first episode, I was like, no.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fantastic show for so long, and then that changed, and yeah, I'm part of the camp that's like very upset and think that it's one of the largest TV finale letdowns of all time.
Okay, fair enough.
But yeah, I guess, I don't know. I'm finding it hard to articulate what I'm thinking, because I guess we have like The Witcher, but that's based off a video game.
Yeah.
That's different than what I'm thinking of. I guess in my mind I had something like Zelda, or not Zelda, that's Xena the Warrior Princess, and like Hercules, and shows kind of like that. But any sort of medieval tinted show, Vikings and Game of Thrones aside, are going to be something that is much more of the Gothic medieval, I find. So kind of like fairy witches and that kind of, and like sword fighting thrown into that. So the distilled medieval, like, so the distilled medievalism rather than the medieval. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, in a way though, I kind of would say that like, given that it's the same kind of format as The Simpsons and that kind of thing, I'm not that surprised that it's distilled medieval. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I'm not talking about Disenchantment right now, though. I'm talking about like other.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. Films, so like that, or TV series specifically, because like
it's true.
The Wix saga. I don't know if it's like based off a book or whatever just came out, right? So that's an example of these like fairy, and they're in the Gothic kind of school setting or whatever, and they learn like sword play, and it's kind of, you know, got that vibe of medieval echoes.
Yeah.
I'm wondering why it has to be like an animated series like Disenchantment at the moment for the like medieval to continue living on in its kind of more medieval form rather than like A Night Before Christmas.
I do wonder though if it isn't also like partly because of the global pandemic that like not much is being done, filmed and published and edited and all that. So I wonder how much of that comes into play as well. We may be like seeing projects like this come, because I think if you do a medieval film project, like there's a lot that goes on to it. Like it's not just like A Night Before Christmas is kind of shitty. Like there's nothing really particularly difficult about creating that film, but like an actual proper medieval film might take a lot more money and time and like lots of different actors together, which at the moment might not be possible. It might be something like that as well. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. And I mean, you're thinking about the very immediate moment. I mean, Disenchantment's been around for 2 years now, 3 years.
Yeah.
Prior, not so much. But your notes or your thoughts about the budget and like detail, that makes more sense. It is a major investment.
Yeah.
So I guess I can see that financially.
Because like with a lot of these things, like really like when they try and set it in the past, they use all of the like incredible things that they've now managed to do with editing and filming and all of that. But like that is very expensive, and also it takes a very long time between a pitch and when you actually get to filming and like post-production and stuff. So I wonder if it isn't also like that at the minute.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there's also the Amazon series Middle Earth that's been in the works for 3 years. That's like the prequel to Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which again, that's complex and worthy of its own like
thing.
There's just like a lot of potential issues with that. And with Joe, who will be coming on and everything, I mean, people are very passionate about it. And I agree that it may go down the Game of Thrones route, which could be disastrous.
Yeah.
But in regards to just like what you're saying, I bring it up, the timeline and the effort put into it. That also, though, does carry the Tolkien-esque baggage. So that also has a different kind of relationship.
Yeah.
Timeline, but
it's true actually. Like if you know, when we were still studying at UCL, we had to like pitch a medieval film and like the storyline that we wanted to run with, right?
Yeah.
And actually I think I'm maybe getting to your actual point of like there were like quite a lot of ideas that we based off books or medieval stories that actually don't get told, which is also kind of interesting that we don't take inspiration from that. I would have thought also like at the moment with like this pandemic we would go back to that kind of past, but we seem to have kind of moved into something different at the moment.
Yeah, at first it seemed like that was going to be the way that it was going to go, and yeah, I think that it was perhaps too
optimistic
extreme, or but in what you were saying in that pitch, not only were people going back to medieval stories, but it wasn't like fairy tales. It was like Romance de la Rose, and they were all also very like feminist oriented, or very like telling of the stories that aren't just knights, castles, dragons, etc.
It has nothing to do with it, really. It was really a cool, fun thing to do.
I mean, it might have also been that the class was
just girls,
all female, girl identifying, and then our teacher was an amazing like queer studies professor, bless Robert Mills. So that also may have had a bit of an influence on that particular exercise by the class. Nothing wrong with that,
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, looking back, it's actually kind of funny that the entire class was female.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess a lot of the majority of the cohort was female to male, but like you just think that the medieval would attract quote unquote male population, and it didn't. So I never really thought of that.
I mean, it is interesting. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to try and figure out why.
It was just kind of a passing thought where I was like, I never thought of that, like our class in that regard from that angle.
And also it was really interesting because we were all very like different had different kinds of thoughts about the medieval. So it was really interesting. As always, like we had very interesting conversations.
Oh yeah, we were all over the place. It was great, like in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess Disenchantment this week has worked more of just kind of like a large thought exercise, and that it's the medieval fantasy, and that it is like such a distillation of the medieval, but not as much as something like, in my PhD, I'll be talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
And its approach and distillation of both the Gothic and the medieval. And that's like a distillation of the distillation of the thought of it, it's very generic. Whereas, Disenchantment does have like smart, fun moments of playing with the medieval, but it also does fall into the default of like, episode I just watched in season 2 where they like are cleaning their clothes for the first and only time that year, and it's like this big holiday, and then every other year they bathe their bodies, and
Yeah.
That's, we've talked about this where it's like, okay, yes, they had different health and cleanliness standards
But
to
not to that extent.
and hygiene, yes, was different in regards like brushing your teeth and washing your hair. But yeah, it's not that extreme. So it is one of those like,
because then at that point you're really laughing at rather than laughing with.
right, because it's beyond the being foreign, the satire. Yeah. So there are things like that. But needless to say,
we like it.
Yeah, we do like the show. So just push through, I would say, the first 7 episodes, which is a bit more
too.
Then I usually say give an episode 3 to 5, or a season like of a series 3 to 5 episodes for that kind of initial hump in the beginning, because sometimes it does take a while to get into narrative structure, character development, plot, everything moving together. But the series, I find, the first season's only 10 episodes, but it's like episodes kind of 8, but 9 and 10 that it really like finds itself, I guess.
Yeah, I can kind of imagine that, really.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, it's the best show ever now, but I appreciate it much more where I'm at now.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want some just kind of like modern medieval background watching something, Disenchantment is for you. Episodes are less than 30 minutes each. So it's not,
except for the first one.
Oh, it's the first one, like 5 minutes or something. Okay.
That felt long.
But well, yeah, so aside from that, then it's much more like digestible, and despite our criticisms, it is like a series that
we wouldn't be talking about it if we thought it was utter shit.
Yeah. Or we would, but we would have been much more extreme. Yeah, if you have a bit of a withdrawal from like Big Mouth or BoJack Horseman, Rick and Morty, which those are all on a different plateau. Those are all exceptionally more mature, better shows than this.
Yeah.
But if you want kind of like a raunchy comedy animation,
something light.
Feels that.
It's definitely light.
Elo, any like final thoughts?
No, I'm thoughtless.
Thoughtless, that's great. Why don't you start signing us off
then?
Yes,
I will. So if you've enjoyed this episode, first of all, thank you for listening. You can find more of our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Audible, YouTube, or wherever you find your podcast, just by typing Modern Medieval Podcast. You can find us on social media if you want to interact with us. Please do. We've got an Instagram. Our handle is podcast.modern.medieval. Our Facebook, we've got both a group where you can interact with us, or a page. Just type Modern Medieval the podcast. And you can obviously email us if you so wish, by typing modern.medieval.podcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, and then finally we have Twitter, which you can find us with the handle @medieval_modern for up-to-date info, etc. Also, just want to say or echo what Elo said, a thank you for listening. We have passed the 1,500 listen/download mark, which is quite exciting for us, especially because I think it was a month ago where we just crossed like 1,000 or something.
Yeah, that's insane.
So thank you so very much.
Thank you so much.
And we're also just excited for what's coming up.
Yeah.
We can't wait to share it with you.
It's really cool how like a passion project is like, it's a little baby that we just enjoy taking care of every week, and then it's slowly building up. It's very cool.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So until next time, I'm Meaghan.
And I'm Elo, and this is Modern Medieval, the podcast.
Well, hello. Little did you know that the episode is not actually over. We are going to give you a little special teaser of my friend Joe Burton's music. He goes under the name Trothgard, and this is a sampling of his upcoming album, The Legends of Alderley, as well as a bit of a taster for what our future musical jingles will sound like. Enjoy.